Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Ben Perl, and I am with Dr. Richard Blake, founder and idea man for his own Blake inverted orthotic. So there's a story that goes with this that is untold. You had a whole treatise and article about it that you're going to tell us about. But first off, for both the podiatrist and the layperson, why would one use this Blake inverted orthotic? What was the whole wellspring for it, or the whole sort of reason that it came to be?
So when I took biomechanics in school and then took the biomechanics sports medicine fellowship at the California uh, College of Podiatric Medicine in San Francisco, we'd have all these terrible patients that pronated way too much, and we couldn't control them with the standard orthotic, and there were rules around the standard orthotic prescription writing, like don't go more than 3 degrees of inversion or the person would be laterally unstable. So we
Was
try.
that a tenet by Dr. Root primarily
Yeah,
from that school?
that was the root philosophy. Um, but a 3 degree inversion just wasn't controlling those patients. So it really started with, so I had this patient who came in with a lateral tibial plafond fracture from skiing, and his knee instantly went into a genu valgum, so with a real collapsed arch, and he was in an offloading brace. He was trying to avoid surgery while the fracture healed, and so the orthopedist uh, told me, he said you got to get something under his foot that sort of straightens his knee out, or it's just going to continue to break down. So I went out of my comfort zone and made him a 4 degree inverted orthotic device, and his knee was about in 16, 17 degrees of valgus. So if you can just imagine the force going up into the medial, or going down into the medial column of his foot from this tremendous genu valgum. So I made him a 4, and his
And you told me it magnifies in a previous conversation. It magnifies as you go down the column, the vertical lower extremity chain to the foot.
Right. It sort of doubles in deformity. So anyway, what I always tell people, his knee laughed at my orthotic, and he walked and he was no better, and he knew it, I knew it, and so I said, okay, we're gonna double the rule. We're gonna go to 6. So I made him 6 degrees of inversion in the cast, and then remade a new orthotic device for the next week. And again, 6 degrees just didn't touch this high degree of genu valgum. So then I made him an 8, and then I made him a 10, I made him a 12, a 16. I started getting bold, going up by 4. Finally, it was like my 6th or 7th orthotic device, I made him a 24 degree inverted orthotic, and his knee straightened up. Because it was all it wasn't a fixed deformity. It was all brand new from his fracture, so it was very moldable. So he made it about 22 more years. uh, 22 or 23 years before he needed a knee replacement. And he was in his late 60s at that time when he needed his knee replacement. So I followed him for many, many years. And eventually, as my technique got better, I found out how much arch people needed, along with the correction, how much heel cup they needed. So I actually made him, I think, a 35-degree orthotic at some point, that with a deeper heel cup, but with a softer plastic. So it wasn't the Road, these were original Roeder orthotics, which would give you more correction than polypropylene would, but of course they would hurt a lot more. So if you're pushing that hard, so polypropylene became his drug of choice, and the orthotic of choice. So anyway, that's how I started. I said, okay, if we can use this in a lateral tibial plafond fracture with causing genu valgum, we can use it in flat-footed children. We can use it in posterior tibial tendon dysfunction and adult acquired flat feet. And we can use it on anybody who has even normal feet that are just pronated.
And
So
the trick to fit it in the shoe was the pour, how you arrange the pour.
yeah, it was an intrinsic pour. So you tilted the cast the degrees that you wanted set, and so you weren't doing anything to the orthotic device. In fact, you asked me, Ben, to bring this is a 25-degree inverted orthotic device. This is the medial side here. I mean, it doesn't look that much different than a regular orthotic. The whole heel has been canted. And
Kind of
what
like
I
up on the side with those skateboard parks, how they have that swoop.
right,
Yeah.
right. It puts pressure on the medial side of the heel, the medial side of the talus, and
And
navicular.
that's going to about the met head level, not into the toes themselves, right? That
Yeah,
or
actually, we stopped the correction at the first met cuneiform joint,
yeah.
and then we dropped the support off, so the first metatarsal can plantar flex. Dr. Dannenberg out there on the East Coast will be happy with that,
No,
because
he will be happy with that statement.
he doesn't
Yeah.
want me jamming up the first ray. So if
Yeah.
you just invert it, but you don't allow that first ray to come down, um, one, they'll slide off it, and two, you'll block the sagittal plane motion going forward. Eh, so, so that was the start in 1981. He was a patient in October of 81, and and then it took 4 years of talking to Dr. Root, and because I was not using the Root technique is a balance technique where you balance out the forefoot varus problems, or the forefoot valgus problems, or at least inverted or everted deformities. It's and this was a rear foot varus cant. So it was a totally separate idea than Root had. And initially he was not in favor of it. And I did, he like, I think, that's way too much, and so I used his lab for 3 years to make every one of my orthotic devices. I went to his lab, taught them how to do it.
Well,
He was
this is the amazing part that I don't think a lot of people will get today, because you were a young father, were you? Did you just have
Yeah,
yeah,
I
you
just
had a little,
had my first baby. Uh,
yeah.
who's
And
41 years old now.
and you're living in San Francisco, are you? Or where
Right.
were you?
Yeah,
And and now you're having to drive. You're taking it so seriously. You're actually driving on weekends to Dr. Root's cabana house or something, or whatever he had for you
yeah,
to
he had
to
moved.
discuss. Hmm.
So originally he was in San Jose, and Dr. Weed was practicing in his office. He had to stop practicing podiatry in 1975 because of rheumatoid arthritis deformed his hand so much. So he had to quit the practice of podiatry, but then he opened his lab to the general public, and of course that was a huge success. So he, for the next 25 years, he mentored all of us until his passing.
So how
But
long did it take you to drive down there to San Jose or that neck of the woods ish?
well, San Jose was for about a year while I was just starting to do the technique, and that took about an hour. But then he moved his whole lab and everyone in his lab up to Auburn, California, which is from San Francisco is a 3-hour drive up into the foothills, and so so I would go up there, and then you know I had enough positive stuff that in 1984, so 3 years later, he invited me to give a talk to his he had a once a year, like the summit, like the biomechanics summit
Yeah,
that you sponsor. Dr. Root had his 1 or 2 day seminar uh, up in Auburn, and anybody who wanted to know anything about biomechanics would drive up there. So in '84, he let me give sort of an introductory talk to what I was doing.
now I want to hear about that talk, but before we get to that, there's just a little sidebar I have to say. Here you are, and now people can just, over the internet ask questions or have a Zoom call like we're doing. But that was quite a bit of dedication. I mean, I imagine you were doing this. I don't know how many weekends you did this, but it was, let's just say, quite a few. And I have this sort of romanticized vision of you driving like in The Graduate, because you did actually, we talked about this, across the Bay Bridge, and we'll take this short clip. And so and here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Jesus loves you more than you will know. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And so you saw that clip, and
Yes,
you were going just like Ben Braddock or whatever from The Graduate across
right.
the bridge. And I don't know if you were as much in a frenzy. I mean, I guess it was just sort of maybe gave you some time to think about your work, or just to decompress as well. But I really think that the amount of dedication that both you and he did is pretty amazing, for, just executing an idea, a concept.
Yeah. I would go up for about once a month, and this went on for 2 or 3 years. I began to write my paper on the inverted technique with his help, and when I finished the paper in 1986 and handed it to him, it was my name first, of course, and his name second, and I did that
Out
one
of
off,
respect. Yeah.
but he had to give in those 2 to 3 years, he had to give me 500 hours of his time. So this was not a small commitment. This is like being a residency director and having to work with all your residents. And so it was, I was using his lab, so he had a little bit of financial benefit, I guess, from it, but he did it from this big heart that he had, and pay it forward. And now I'm trying to pay it forward with fellows and teaching at the local podiatry school. And so, and we all get to that stage where we have to pay it forward. But
Were there any where I had went on that digression before your talk at Auburn? Was there any? How was it received? Your presentation?
So it was, yeah, my presentation was received incredible. And the only, I remember two things. I remember, people coming up to me and asking me further questions afterwards. And I also remember looking at my my closest friend in podiatry, Dr. John Weed, who was in the front row, and he was sleeping in the
Oh man.
I'll always remember that. You know, here I finally looked down into the audience, and there was probably 80 people there, and he's like sound asleep. Now,
That's your most distinct memory.
yeah, yeah. Now he died of heart problems like 4 years later. So he was that was probably you know something to do with his heart and having worked all hard all week. So anyway,
It's funny the things we remember.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like little things. But
Well,
but so the next year we had the seminar every year. So after that, every year, you know, I would give sort of what my findings was. It wasn't until like that I think that seminar, or it was the next year, I finally came up, solidified the 5-to-1 rule, that if you can't people 5 degrees in the cast, it makes a 1 degree change at the foot. So the resting calcaneal stance position became the gold standard of measurement. So if you wanted to take somebody who was pronated 10 degrees, you technically would have to give them a 50-degree correction. And most people don't go that far. But they'll try to make it less pronated. So they'll go 25.
nor can everybody tolerate it, because some people laterally are just get too unstable.
Yes,
For
yes,
the practitioner now, and I know that they can do it for the lab that you do consulting for at Kevin Root Labs, which I guess is a continuation of the Root legacy to some extent. His son is involved with that lab.
yes.
Yeah. What would you tell the practitioner? Hey, I want a Blake inverted, started at 15. But like, I mean, every case is different, but are there any guideposts you would give for how much you want to go on that inversion?
Well, I wrote a book,
Yeah.
the inverted orthotic technique, and it's probably got about 70 pages where it just talks about the technique and all the, why who are your patients that you should do it on. But I have a blog, Dr. Blake's Healing Soul, and I've got it's all on my blog. And
Plus, you do posts that are featured in the podiatry management news listserv that are wonderful. Not just on your orthotic, but some nice little things, nuances that you talk about with isolating the Achilles versus the soleus versus the gastroc with different exercises you do. So
yeah,
we appreciate that, and always picking up a new trick for us to use in clinic.
yeah. So as you alluded to, I'm working with Kevin Root Lab. So if somebody wanted to learn the inverted technique, they would just have to, ask for a consult with me. They'd have to use the lab and send in, if they wanted something, or
Yeah.
more formal relationships, say, I don't know how much to do, but I do require them to either take a picture of the back of the heel of this, and hopefully draw a line that bisects the heel, so that we can get an idea of how much correction we want to attain.
Yeah,
So
that's a good guidepost.
the
Well,
resting calcaneal stance position is the key one for these pronated feet that we want to improve.
listen, thanks so much for sharing your story. Now it's here on the cyberspace for perpetuity,
Oh,
and
you're very
you deserve to have your idea in perpetuity, because it's a good one, and you're a real innovator. So thanks again. It's been great. On a personal note, being able to ask you a question, have you review some of the things that I've been writing as well, just to tighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it's been my honor to work with you, Ben. You're like unbelievable. I always tell people how like you are like the future of podiatry, and your enthusiasm is like unbelievable. So
Well, I appreciate that. And
kudos to you.
well, listen, you've been doing it a long time, and you still bring a lot of energy to the forums as well. So we all appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank
Well, listen, till next time, till up the road, and Dr. Blake will once again be part of a panel next year, and we're going to try to do some live motion stuff, or at least have some videos. As much as I like all the talk about shoes and static stuff, it's nice to actually get some thoughts about, hey, this person is moving this way. I had a guy today that was from the NIH that had he actually had uh, a he had a hyperextended knee, so his knee was like going backwards, and this was from Botox injections that he had from runner's dystonia. So I may present that at the
that's incredible.
at the biomechanics summit, just to get people's ideas about what they will do. I mean, he has an AFO, and I talked about maybe trying to get him a little bit more over his ankle, but like everything, you try things, and a lot of it is just what they're willing to accept. And then he's in the middle of a protocol still with Botox that he had to the gastroc soleus, which may have contributed some to the what ends up being this hyperextensus on his knee. So anyway, we're gonna have fun looking through some of those cases, and always thank you for your time, and thanks for continuing to educate the new practitioners.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I mean, the Botox in the gastroc, helps the hamstrings keep the knee flexed, and if you take out the gastroc, you can easily go into hyperextension if that's what happened with the
He
Botox.
felt that is what contributed to it, at least in terms of timing.
Yeah.
He saw one of the big wigs that is a neurologist at the NIH.
Okay.
And initially he said he was having improvement, and his whole thing was kind of nebulous. His times were getting slower. He was felt like some issues with the hip, and this is what they decided to do. And it's, not, we can all say, from a retrospectoscope, we weren't there at the beginning to see what it was, but at least from his version of events, it may have contributed to that.
Yeah.
And from a standpoint of you just thinking it through, it sounds like you're in that realm as well.
Right.
Yeah.
That camp. Right.
So well, listen, we're going to hear more, and that's the great thing. You have you're drawing on all these years of experience, where I can just throw out something like that, and you've got some ideas about the mechanisms of what we're actually doing and what we're blocking. So listen again with Dr.
All right.
Richard Blake. Till next time, this is Dr. Ben Pro.